I'm Franc Han Shih. This is Thai PBS World. Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin is planning to implement digital wallet scheme to spur the economy. However, Move Forward Party claimed that this policy could violate the constitution. Today's guest will be sharing his views on policy and his visit to the United States. Joining me now is Mr. Pita Limjaroenrat, Chief Advisor to Move Forward Party. Fantastic to have you on the show. Great to talk to you again since our Walk and Talk interview in Parliament.
Likewise, Frank.
Yes.
Happy to be back in Thai PBS. It's been a while.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being with us. I think first and foremost, you've been through a lot since the campaign season.
Right.
You led your party to get the highest vote in this year's general election.
Right.
You put all effort to form the coalition alliance with other parties.
Right.
Right now,
Right.
you are the chairperson of the advisory committee to your party.
Yes.
What have you heard from those people, your supporters, professionals, professors, economists in the United States?
In the States.
In the United States. In terms of support to you, of course, and reservations against you, if you want to talk about it.
I'm not sure if the question is specifically for my trips in America or generally after the 6 months that the election results have happened.
You can start from the U.S. one because it's the recent.
U.S. first and then domestically.
Yes.
In the U.S., people were trying to make sense of Thai politics, especially when it comes to politicians and policies. And politics is not so easy to make sense of coming from abroad. But I think it's more unexpected from my end is how much people knew about the issues. Whether it's people in New York meeting with the Time 100 Next. When they see my face, they might confuse me with the mayor of Taipei a little bit. but once they see me, and okay, so you're the prime ministerial candidate for Thailand, and they knew all about the things that were going through, the kind of comeback kid. Everybody was thinking that I wouldn't be able to lead or wouldn't be able to pull out a number of seats higher than the previous time. It's a rookie party, only 3-year-old. You won, you formed. Many promises were made. Now you are in temporarily suspended because of a defunct media company that closed down 17 years ago. That was New York part. Then I moved to Boston, to Cambridge, where I graduated from. And I had the height, the peak of my trip by meeting with former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. While we had a lot of common, I'll probably go into details if you probed. But she also was very well averse of all the issues that were going on. She even specifically named the company in question. She even said, "So how's your ITV case?" Like she knew it that much, which I understand. Of course, her diplomatic neutrality when it comes to domestic politics here in Thailand, but people know to their details. Same with the Washington D.C. circle. Last part before I give the floor back to you is the amount of volatility of all the things going on around in Washington, as well as private sectors meeting with CEOs on geopolitical tensions in various places. Of course, last 2 weeks until today is still Israel-Hamas. Even Myanmar had become something that people don't talk much. I don't want to say lower of priority because I can't say that on their behalf, and it would be diplomatically incorrect. But it would be safe for me to assume that the majority of conversations around the Hill are based on the Middle East or Europe, and I think that pushes ASEAN back outside of the international radar, and Thailand, as part of that ASEAN without much reliance or credibility, and I'll tell you why in a minute, is back further away. They knew about my story, they knew about election, but they didn't know about Thailand as a whole. And my objectives in going to the trip is or was threefold to do the opposite of that, to put Thailand back into the international radar of what we can do together with our ASEAN founding members and really take care of the situation in Myanmar, for example, which is something that the Americans want and the Chinese want. Then, to get in touch with the international voters. Last election, it was a very critical one in the sense of the voting turnout. 76% here in Thailand, but also all over the world, starting from Sydney number 1, London number 2, Canberra number 3, New York number 10, South Korea number 9. So I knew all these numbers of people who were coming out of their daily lives all around the world to participate in the vote. So that's also a chance for me to connect with them. So that's my American trip in a nutshell.
Great. You summarized the support to you in the US, other parts of the world.
Yes.
How about doubts against you? Have you heard anything in US?
I didn't hear, I saw. I didn't hear at the time. I saw it on TikTok maybe 2 days later.
Yeah.
But it's part of democracy.
Yes,
it's always welcome. It happened right here in front of Thai PBS once, I remember. It happened in Samyan. It happened in Ayutthaya for me, and various places. I mean, as long as it's peaceful, as long as you're doing it to really voice your concern, I don't see anything wrong with that at all. And it doesn't take away my focus of the trip, and I welcome diverging views.
Understandable, that's their right to say something in public.
Yes, of course.
In one interview in the US with one international media, you said, quote, "I'm here to put Thailand back on the United States and the international radar." Do you think Thailand is still invisible on regional and international stage, given that Prime Minister Srettha went to United States in September for UNGA, UN General Assembly. In October, he went to Middle East for regional summit with, of course, Saudi Arabia and other countries there. So Thailand is still uninfluential on regional stage and international stage, correct?
We have done better, and we could have done better also. So what I'm trying to differentiate for you is that, of course, international trips are good, but the ability to follow up, to have mutual benefit of influence. Your question, the key word of your question was influence. What's influence? Influence is the ability to get someone to do what you want, whether through cooperation or coercion. In the world, you see a lot of coercion as well, and also cooperation. Well, in order for someone to cooperate with you in foreign policy, you have to have the legitimacy. Foreign policy is the reflection of domestic policy. If you want to be part of the international rights community, it's something that you have to clean your own house before you go do it. To have an influence in foreign direct investment, where we're going to come, you have to understand the new international foreign direct investment climates, where it's not just going to be just tax exemption for the next 8 years and we'll be okay, because there's international tax mechanism that doesn't allow that countries to do that anymore. It's about factor of production, it's about workforce, it's about the ability to get involved in the international new supply chain. So if someone were to come here, they need a workforce that speaks both English and Chinese, and some people who will be able to integrate into the semiconductor complex supply chain right away. And that could be either Vietnam or could be Thailand or could be Malaysia. The size of the market, 66 million people versus 100 in Vietnam. So there's no shortcuts to it. When you want to say that Thailand means business and Thailand is back, is way much more than international trips. However, if it were me, of course, international trips are important, but off a very, very constructive and detailed agenda of what we have to offer to them and what we can get in return from them. So in order to take care of the problems within our country, so such as fertilizer prices has been high, inflation prices has been high. We import 90%. Such as transboundary haze, PM 2.5, that is coming from neighboring parties. That's probably something that is very important. Flash floods and wildfires has been around for God knows how long. Australia is pretty good at this. Sweden is pretty good at this. So instead of like going to countries based on my preference, I would have my list of priorities or problems in this country or potentials, and I would follow to them. Or Morocco is pretty good when it comes to fertilizer production. They have had some good relationship with us also. Instead of just relying on India and the gas from Russia-Ukraine conflict, then I would try to diversify them so that if next times the problem like this happens again, then I know how to diversify my risk, and like agenda-based, not country-based.
So actually, you just talk about my questions about FCI, but I will ask you again.
Okay.
Presentation is good for, of course, a country to go to an international stage like you and other summit. But pragmatic cooperation, is what you said, with other countries is the key, and policy too.
Exactly.
Next question, I think people seen in the world so much tensions in Europe, Ukraine, Russia, in Middle East. Right now we've seen Hamas and Israel. You talk about Myanmar too, of course. Junta-led government makes a lot of difficulties for neighboring countries, for Thailand, of course for China too. Some experts say that Taiwan is the next potential conflict point. How can Thailand strengthen its influence, influence on international stage, regional stage too? What are move forward stances on these issues? Because this show ideology from you and move forward too.
First, we have to think of us as a middle power country and not a younger brother to anyone. Second is that we really need to return to the foundation of ASEAN centrality, at least the 5 founding members, to really realize the potential of and the reason of existence of why ASEAN was established in the first place. With that two combined, that's only the pre-context, the preamble, that we have a sizable amount of influence to the world. Like if it was only Thailand who wanted to voice something, I would argue it would be very hard to get heard just by speaking on our behalf or on our own thinking. We could vote in the UN resolutions and things like that, which is also very important. We don't abstain on things that we're supposed to be vocal about. That's also a sideline issue. But if you were to propose something to the world, if it was just Thailand alone, among all these global noises, you're not going to be heard. Also, if you're not part of the ASEAN centrality, and what I mean by centrality specifically is reliance, relevance, and credibility. If you ask, there was a survey asking people all around ASEAN whether ASEAN is still relevant to them, is still meaningful to them. And in Thailand, I think that the survey was asking a university student, a younger generation of Thais, Chulalongkorn, but you have to fact check me whether I'm correct or not. And the result that came out, we're at the lowest. We felt like ASEAN means nothing to us, and any other countries are not so good except for maybe Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, for example. So in order for us to remain relevant together, internally, as well as to the world, and credible. So, everybody knows 5-point consensus. All the media outlets and anchors have been reporting 5-point consensus for 3-4 years now. But it never materialized. It has to be turned into a 5-year roadmap where we all come together. And Thailand is a core part of that. We hear of the Foreign Affairs Minister of Singapore on his speech a couple of days ago, Malaysians, Indonesians from time to time. And when I meet them in person, together with the former special envoy, also Vice Chancellor at the time was Derek Chollet from America at the time. Okay, it was talking about 5-point consensus and this and that. We need to help them soon. Typhoon is coming up. Let's do something about it. America is going to pass the Burma Act, but or even the MOGI sanction, the financial sanction that happened last week while I was in Washington D.C. to stop financial transactions from Ministry of Gas and Energy in Myanmar, for example. Whether that would be enough pressure, as well as finding incentives for the people of Myanmar to come together to a negotiation table and return Myanmar to democracy at their own intention. That's something that is still far apart. But I would definitely argue that if Thailand gets involved because of our border proximity, because of the linkages between economic migrants, the border management, the well-being of the people of Myanmar is also the well-being of Thai people. But I would also argue that if Thailand is not part of that ASEAN centrality cooperation, it's going to be very hard. Departing government last time, I still remember before the election that there was a spat, tit and tat email exchange or letter exchange between Foreign Affairs Thailand and Foreign Affairs Indonesia, if you remember at the time. That kind of showed fragmentation within ASEAN. So Thailand needs to step up and work with the remaining ASEAN countries, especially the 5 founding members, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore, to make sure, hey, we have muscle, we're a middle power, and if we stick to rule-based world diplomacy. Lawrence Wong said it yesterday, 2 days ago during his PAP conference, and he said, we're friends of both, and it's about principles, it's about law. If our friends are doing something that is provoking peace and instability within that region, it affects Singaporeans, we're going to call them out. In the same time, we're going to do the same. So I think that's a rule-based principle in diplomacy rather than picking sides. And you can only do that if you are relevant and credible. But if no words, no weight in foreign policy.
What you flagged here about ASEAN centrality and ASEAN 5-year roadmap for the future plan are the keys. But of course, how to make it come true is the key in ASEAN, because of course right now we haven't seen any cooperation, real cooperation, pragmatic cooperation within ASEAN, given that every country has their own agenda, national agenda at this point. So how Thailand could take or obtain the leading role to solve Myanmar issue is critical.
The government needs to show up to those meetings. And the government needs to change, to have a paradigm shift that we have experienced in this. We've done it a couple of times in the past 20, 30 years. We have a protocol for it to take care of humanitarian corridor. So we know how. It's really a matter of will. The government needs to be willing, ready, and able. But the willing part is, the ready part is okay. The able part is definitely okay. But the willing part, that really depends person to person. But it was me. I felt like this is a mutual boon to both the people of Myanmar and people of Thailand without domestic political interference. We could work with the international community and all sides within Myanmar to find the right amount of incentives and pressure so that they could return to democracy. And once that happens, once Myanmar is vibrant once again, Thailand will be super vibrant. We'll be the first one who catch the benefits, the prize. But if we prolong this, keep this as further away from us as possible, it's not going to happen. But once people of Myanmar coughs, Thailand will get sick. Will get the cold, which we have seen in the past given the economic migrants, look at the fishery industry and the factories and things like. They are the economic nuts and bolts of Thai economy going forward.
Great summary and metaphor there. I think the inertia of the government is the key. So how to, as what you say, how to do action fast to solve this.
Short term, we have Foreign Affairs Committee. We're doing everything we can to help in that front, whether it's the rebalancing of superpower in terms of foreign affairs, or even immediate problems such as the hostage negotiation. You know, when I was in America, I understood that the structure of each country, when it comes to these crises, are different. Of course, they have public positions out there, so you know, humanitarian pause, civilian structure protection, and things like that. Two-state solution in Palestine. President Barack Obama came out and said it's very complex. If you don't know what happened in 1948, 63, 76, two uprisings, Oslo Accord, you cannot judge very quickly what to do. You know, but in Thailand, we have been affirming to the state the two-state solutions for a while, but it's not going to be as easy as it looks on the paper. But I've seen that different countries have different operations. At least, you know, a country like Thailand, I understand that there's a couple of public servants on the ground in Israel, maybe 6 or 7 of them. You know, kudos to them. You know, what they're doing to the country is a major boon to the families. But I feel like it's time for special envoy, you know, someone who's accountable for the negotiation on the ground, and also chief negotiator is something that various countries, I cannot name names because of diplomacy, that they have seen results of release of the most controversial hostages through a person who's a chief negotiator, chief negotiation officer whose sole purpose is to get them released. You know, these are the two things that various countries have this kind of structure in place. So I support the Thai government fully. My party supports the government fully in order to swiftly carry out the hostage negotiation, and I hope that we hear the good news very soon.
We've seen some good news here, but still Thai hostages, most of them, of course, still are in Israel. Let's take the spotlight back to domestic policy.
Sure.
We've seen several changes of Prime Minister Srettha's policy,
yes,
including digital wallet scheme,
yes,
the increase of minimum wage per day compared to their promise during the campaign season. What are your reaction to their government policies right now, given that some of Thai citizens, they couldn't have the 10,000 baht from the government funds?
Well, let me begin by saying that the Thai people, the majority of Thai people, is in dire need of help or some sort of assistance. You know, for the last decade that we've had, the economy has been growing at about 1.5%, 1.8%, 10 years consecutively. Within ASEAN, we're the second largest in terms of economy. We're the second slowest in terms of growth. And COVID has done a permanent scar to a lot of people who lost their jobs in their mid-age, same year as me, for example. So some sort of programs and assistance needs to be helped. The amount of debt per GDP at 90%, that's something that's required restructuring. But I would argue that what the government needs to do, whichever government, including Kun Srettha, is to do an economic restructuring rather than economic stimulation. And let alone, if we talk about economic stimulation, you know, you could do through quantitative easing like it's done in the past, or even helicopter money, which was found in 1969 by Milton Friedman. It's a very old concept of borrowing in the future money and helicopter money to the people without much strategizing or thinking. So I felt like that amount of money, first of all, where it's going to come from, whether that same amount of money can be alternatively do something for alternative Thailand or what it's done before. Could it be fully targeted to children who have slipped out of the education system during the COVID crisis because the parents didn't have the money to send them? Could it be help to reduce the inequality in public health officials? Could it be something to help with the elderly people, something that is of investment because there's dynamics to all these things, rather than economic stimulation through helicopter money like that, which is not probably the right time to do so. But I would argue that they don't have to listen to me. The most critical opponent of digital wallet is digital footprint. Of what you've been saying, of the flip-flopping through various speakers, the super app versus Baotang, the source of money, the consumption of it, the technology behind it. So I think what I could say with some confidence is during the debates I have here at Thai PBS. I think the question was about digital wallet, and people were saying, it's blockchain technology. So it's not just economic consumption, but it's also a digital disruption. It's a digital upgrade for the country. And then we were like, but we know the transaction per second of prompt pay and Baotang is this high. Like at certain peak of like this kind of system in PromptPay, the transaction per minute per second is this high, but we know the blockchain allows only this, and also the privacy issue and things like that. And then it became a different technology now.
Yes.
So the point of focus kept moving in circles. That whether it is successful or not, a kind of credibility of the government economic policies reminds me of what happened in England during Liz Truss premiership, of borrowing something in the future to take care of the energy prices, to cut taxes without any, to cut tax in hope that the economy will grow because of that, and that will recover the revenue loss during the time. That's just a very harsh summary. I know if you are into British politics, you know much better than I do. But the perception, at least, or the smell of it that it's come out, the kind of not thinking through, not thinking through and not follow through. I think that affects the perception of it, and I understand that there's a lot of rating agencies that are concerned, at least privately. So whether it's reducing energy prices for 3 months, whether it's free transportation for a couple of trains, that's quick wins, short term. But on the structural side of things, to make it sustainable and make it long term, pool gas for energy, also weighted average price between the import gas, LNG, and also the Gulf gas, that's something that will help. Alternative energy supplies, such as the solar cell panels that is liberalized, for example. Also transportation and communication that is decentralized all around the country. That might be something that is required. No shortcuts in fixing Thailand economy.
3 layers here from your answers. I think first layer, the government, Thai government, of course, they have to think about long-term policy there, not just short-term to stimulate the economy, because we wouldn't see the long-term result there. Secondly, of course, I think it's about cybersecurity, as you talk about, the privacy here. Can the government, Srettha's administration, really handle this all fast transaction and the privacy there? Third layer, you talk about Liz Truss. It's very short-lived, short-term lived government in British government history. So let's see what Thai government will go through. I think.
But to be fair to them, just as if they're in the room with us, short term is fine. Myself, when I was proposing during the debate, I have my 100-day agenda, 1-year agenda, and the second term agenda even. So short term is fine as long as you have the long term.
So what are the long term policies?
Version of it that needs to be what kind of laws need to be amended, what kind of budget allocation that needs to be put in place. Those are the things are something that's of important. But if you start on the right things, you should be able to follow up and follow through, not just a promotional activity as accused.
Yes, to balance it, of course, they said that, Prime Minister Srettha said that they will have long-term policy come up, but we are waiting for the details right now.
Well, you should have known that by the debates. Actually, that's the whole point. But anyways.
Right. Next one is foreign direct investment. Given that in my program, I interview chairpersons, president of many foreign chamber of commerce. They talk about many issues that the government should solve immediately. No matter is regulatory guilty, water shortage, green supply chain, skilled labor force that you just talked about earlier on. What could Move Forward Party do in the parliament? Because it symbolizes the power of Move Forward Party in the parliament to push this issue to the right direction.
All of it just mentioned, but it's not going to be just area-based, like EEC-based, or even the new land bridge project that might come into law in that sense. That when you say that when there's a word special zone, on the reflection of that means that when it's normal, it's really bad. Land rights, water shortage, environmental friendly waste management in the special zone is really bad. That's why you got to have that special zone that allows 99 years of land rent and all the water get taken care of, the reserves, but the remaining part of Thailand. We wanted to be able to do that and upgrade that, but throughout the country by diversifying or reallocating budgets for these kind of things, decentralize it for people to have the economic outbursts and rather focusing just on a specific areas. When it comes to foreign direct investment, the new word that I learned during my U.S. trip is this. Are you familiar with the term friendshoring?
No.
Friendshoring?
Shoring?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's something that's being said a lot in the private sector, in biotech, in water management, in semiconductor industry, when there's geopolitical tensions going on within various parts in the world, and they want to diversify out of a certain country, then they look for friends to offshore. So it becomes friendshoring. And Thailand potentially is actually part of that. For America also, we're like 190-year relationship alliance between Thailand and America. Has been mostly security alliance through Cobra Gold, but commerce and investment and trade is also something that's of importance. Also the Chinese, also the Taiwanese, something that they are looking to diversify their political risk by looking for a friendly place to invest. So that's a trend that, can I friendshore you, that they would come, but okay, tell me reasons why Thailand is a good country for me to friendshore. Someone would say that to me. Right? I'm in biotech, so I synthesize molecules in order to fight against cancer. And that requires a lot of manipulation of ways to synthesize those molecules. I can't do it here in America. Now the Chinese are doing it. There's a center that can be outsourced, and you could give them algorithms, and they will try different things in different temperatures and things like that, and they'll see which one works. They'll report it to America. They said, okay, whether it's me, myself, whether I trust my partner in China, the government is not so happy, so I need to friendshore. How about biotechnology in Thailand? Are you capable of doing something like that? And your English proficiency, how's that? And your Chinese proficiency, because sometimes we have to work in different value chains, and how many doctors do you have if we were to test them? The clinical trials in various phases, there's 3 phases. First, second, and third, how's your law according to this? And that's when you feel like, okay, they see me as a friend, but there's a lot of work for me to be done. There's a lot of work for us to be done, for sure. Just, to that bullet points of your question that you had mentioned, whether it's like factor of production, human resources, natural resources, and it's not so much just tax bonus anymore. Like when we were growing up, then people would say 8-year tax exemption, factory import will be exempted. Those are the things that are of yesterday. They are trying to curb this down so that people don't incentivize other countries to come and invest just because it's lower in tax.
Let me interrupt a little bit. Of course, good summary about the bullet points here, but how in the parliament for move forward party?
Legally, financially, to make something change happen, the most basic, legally, financially, and then executively. We didn't become the government, so that's why we couldn't have the executive power and the manpower and the public servants to come behind us to rally to make sure that we tackle the problem of land rights, land justice, water management, education system. So when you're in opposition constructively, you tend to offer checks and balance, also alternative views of what can be done, of what has been done before and what the government is doing now. We can definitely pass progressive laws legally into the parliament that allows all these upgrades in the value chain. We can also debate in the parliament and give speeches in the parliament and form the National Budget Committee, which I was part once. Very valuable lesson to discuss the direction of where the taxpayers' money should be spent. So that's something that I could do.
Okay.
But if I pass progressive laws, and then I propose the budget to the parliament myself when I'm in the executive power, and then I could roll out projects based on enablers of both the financial resources and the legal resources, and hopefully I have the people behind me that will become the human resources to make change happen.
Thanks. Next one, of course, about the controversial story here last week. In Move Forward Party, we've seen the sexual harassment cases there. In your party, some criticize that Move Forward Party had double standard or slow move to cope with the sexual harassment case. Any progress or improvement right now in your party?
We have to be much stricter.
Yeah.
And we cannot allow things like that to happen again. And we have to think about revising prevention, which is code of conduct. So now I'm a backbencher advising Kun Chaitawat as the leader of the party, so I have to know my place as much as I wanted to do. So I have compiled all the code of conduct of institutions and political parties that are good in this. You have to be able to look at the code of conduct and the training that we give to our staff and our MPs. What's the difference between sexual harassment, sexual assault, sexual violence, sexual irritation, what's grooming, what's revenge porn. All these things are other things that if you look at institution, to give you a precise example, I was in Harvard at the time when my broke heart when I saw the news broke out. And then I asked the professors right away and the staff right away, so what does Harvard do to these kind of institutions with diversity of its people? And they printed out a print of conduct for me. UN, United Nations, the strictest code of conduct is what? Show me. And then we would try to do this and localize it to our prevention effort, and our people, not to let it happen again. But then also not just the prevention part, but the rectification part. I have to speak on the behalf of the people who were behind the investigation. A lot of it requires details. A lot of it requires scheduling. And of course, we have to give full courtesy to the victims of when they want to speak or when they don't want to speak, and how much information they can give to the public, and how they want to remain anonymous. So that requires a little bit more time than what we had anticipated. But then there are ways, I cannot say it public or not, but I have spoken to Kun Chaitawat on various ways to speed it up. Rather than, for example, what I can say is, rather than waiting to hear out both sides of evidences and arguments, perhaps you have to put that person on probation first until he clears his name.
Yeah.
The opposite of the other way around. And things like that might or might not, we have to really see the pros and cons, but we'll try our best and we'll be serious and strict about it.
This is a very critical test, of
Yes.
course, which contradicts
Yes.
to ideology of the Move Forward Party.
Yes.
So,
Corruption as well. You know,
Yes.
corruption is also something that we need to make sure.
So, of course, there might be the future tests coming up similar to this kind of case too. So, have to be very careful.
Thank you.
Future plan, of course, last question, really quick. Some media say that when you went to New York, you posted trendy, fashionable pictures there. Some media say that Pita is back. Given that, of course, you led your party to gain the highest vote in the general election, your supporters still expect you to become the Prime Minister maybe in next term. What's your goal in the next 4 months? Given that, of course, there's a legal challenges lie on your shoulder. It's a very big burden for you too. How to resuscitate your MP status? It's paramount. How do you see the legal challenges on Friday? Because of course, constitutional courts, they will have a meeting on your case too. What's your sense?
My understanding is that, you know, we have a fear of the unknown here, but I decided to come out of fear and get my legal teams to make some calls, and they made some calls to the people responsible for both cases. And from my understanding, from my brief, is that it's going to be an internal investigation. There'll be no more verdicts on Friday, from what I heard.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've heard the rumors going around, but instead of sticking to that rumors, I decided to try my best to seek facts. And so we made some calls directly, and they said it's going to be just another weekly meeting to continue the case and things like that. So I don't think it's not going to be anything surprising this Friday.
Yeah, but back to the point that how to resuscitate your MP status.
So and what I do from now on, at the very fundamental level, is to make sure that the trust and the love that people have given me throughout the past election, also the validity of the election that allows me to continue my duties where appropriate, and that's speaking on the behalf of the people, and that's provide checks and balances, and that's trying to pass progressive laws. The third one I couldn't do because I couldn't get into the parliament. I cannot sign, I cannot vote. But wherever I go, and if I see something that is wrong, or whether I see something that's off potential, such as indigenous tourism, then I will speak out, and then people will hopefully listen, comment, criticize, make it better, and then sometimes that it will come out as a potential part of emergence of indigenous economy as a whole. Indigenous economy is not just tourism. It could be mining. It could be various things. But that's the kind of thing that is inclusive growth. It's a growth towards the tourism, but it's not of inequality where, you know, just 5-star hotels and beaches and things like that. So that's what I will continue to do. On the legal front, I'm confident of my evidences, professionally and personally. And my case is not the first case. There have been cases and cases and cases in the last parliamentary session, maybe 60 or 70 of them if you Google up, you see. And you see people who passed the test and people who didn't pass the test. Pass the test means they returned to the parliament. Didn't pass the test, they got disbanded. Usually it's like to your recognition is probably Kun Thanathorn and Kun Gop Thanwarin, for example. But there's a majority of people who even had some sort of hint of misdoing. A majority of them passed the test and returned to the parliament. The company didn't have any registration as a media company, or maybe just changed abruptly. No source of revenue, doesn't have any license. Various ruling styles. What I gave was just a few examples. But if there's justice in the country, and use law and use those kind of hearing that allowed the incumbent or the government at the time, majority, that could go ahead with their duties, I'm confident I'll be returning to the parliament.
Great.
And if not, government house one day.
Confidence is your insight and your key there. Great. Thank you so much for today. Your insight, everything's very, very influential, very good. Mr. Pita Limjaroenrat, Chief Advisor to Move Forward Party there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
ขอบคุณมากครับ More news to come.